So this is the iPad Pro 2018, one of my favorite devices I've used throughout my production flow in 2021, and I've had a lot of fun integrating it with my workflow. But is it right for you? And should you even consider it, especially with the release of things like the M1 iPad Pro? Well, let's find out. First of all, as always, we have the specs. This version of the iPad Pro is rocking an A12X Bionic processor, a 7-core GPU, 4GB of RAM or 6GB on the 1TB model. I personally would have very much liked to see at least 6GB across the board, but it is what it is. And as always, we are going to be talking more about how this thing performs later. You also have storage options of 64, 128 and 256GB. Color options of either silver or space gray, so no fancy colors, unfortunately, like we saw on the later iPad Air. This thing is 5.9mm thick and weighs in at 468 grams, which honestly really gives it a nice premium feel. As for the specs though, that's pretty much it. Now obviously there are going to be some more specs later on, but those are like screen resolution and battery size, so they're going to be in their respective sections. We'll talk about those in a bit, but for now, how's the build quality? Well, this iPad was the first of its generation, doing away with the old and refining this thing to a gorgeous slab of aluminium. Removed the home button, squared out the edges, and added a USB-C port. The front is obviously made of glass, but in terms of design, it has been overall refined with more of a modern look. However, in terms of durability, while it's rare that you are going to drop your iPad due to its large nature, I would personally recommend keeping at least a cover case on it purely to protect that nice big screen, because the repair bill of an Apple product with a screen this large, not going to be wallet friendly. It also doesn't really feature that many other protection features other than the glass being scratch resistant with an oleophobic coating, so do be careful not to drop this thing. You'll also want to avoid getting it wet, but then again, this is much less likely than with a phone, and in my time using this device, it's done great. Overall, the iPad Pro 2018 does both look and feel excellent. It's got an overall refined design from the previous generation, and while there aren't too many special features for its protection, it is a pretty gorgeous piece of engineering. Up next, we have a real standout point from the iPad Pro, which is, of course, the screen. This iPad Pro features an 11-inch 1668 by 2388 IPS LCD screen with a refresh rate of 120Hz and a PPI of 225. In all applications I tried this thing in, it looked absolutely incredible, especially with the wide color gamut and the high refresh rate. Speaking of the refresh rate, this is variable, so if you do something which will cause the refresh rate to ramp up, such as scroll in Safari, or play a 120 FPS video for some reason, it'll ramp up, but if you don't need it, then it will go down to conserve the battery. It does feature True Tone, which means that all your colors are going to be balanced to the light around you, but be very careful with this, especially if you want to edit some photos. I always make sure to turn off the True Tone whenever I do any photo or color sensitive work at all on this thing, so do be aware of that if you're going to be using it for creative application. Everything from watching videos on this device to, as I said, editing photos was all massively improved by how impressive this screen was. And while we're going to be talking about the actual performance, especially with the creative stuff later on, the screen looked absolutely phenomenal throughout. In terms of the main unlock method for this iPad, again, this was the first iPad where Apple ditched the traditional home button for the newer FaceID technology. And while it is nice to have, I do have to say that it can occasionally be a little bit awkward to use. For one, if you're holding your iPad in your hands and you accidentally cover the front-facing camera, you won't be able to unlock your iPad, which is a problem you don't usually face on the iPhone side of things. Now, you do get a nice little warning that your camera is covered, but honestly, I do think I'd prefer a side fingerprint sensor or a lock button one like on the newer iPad Airs. It's a small complaint and it does work great 90% of the time, but there may be a small adjustment period. After this, we have the camera, and while it is nice that it's been included, it is significantly less useful than it would be on a phone for obvious reasons. I mean, imagine taking this thing out to like take photos. Hold on, stand still, I gotta get you all in the frame. You do get a single 12 megapixel f1.8 main camera along with a 7 megapixel f2.2 front facing camera, and the photos it takes are perfectly functional. For example, if you're using this thing in class and you want to take a photo of something that's on the board, then this thing will definitely get the job done for that. However, in general photography, this thing is certainly not made to be a DSLR killer. I mean, it is literally twice the size of the full frame camera I'm filming this on. Again, the selfie camera is fine. Honestly, I think this is a little bit more important on the iPad side of things, because chances are you probably are going to use this thing for like FaceTime. But again, it's unlikely that this thing is going to replace your phone as a selfie machine. That said though, the pictures it takes do look fine. In terms of video on the main camera, this thing does shoot up to 4K 60 FPS for some reason, and 1080p at up to 30 FPS on the front-facing camera, which is honestly way more than this thing needs. I can't imagine many situations where you'd ever take this thing out to get some shots. But this, again, with the 1080p at 240 FPS, have only ever practically been used by me when testing this thing. So as always, you can judge for yourself, but I really don't think the camera quality matters all that much with this thing. What does matter though is OS and app performance. Mine is running iPad OS 14, and scrolling through the OS, opening up stock apps, and overall performing system functions runs absolutely great on this thing. The scrolling especially due to that 120Hz screen. However, how does it perform in a creative setting? Well, I've been using the iPad Pro as a creative assistant for a little bit over a year now, but this specific model has only been on my team for a couple of months. I think since like July? Don't quote me on that. It's either July or August. It's been a good few months though, nonetheless. So let's talk about what I've thrown at this thing and how well it's handled it. First up is photo editing. When I first got this thing, I made the decision to start editing all of my thumbnails on it. So I set out with my knockoff Apple Pencil that I got on the internet, and in both Lightroom and Affinity Photo, my photo editing experience was not only as smooth as it was on the computer, but also became more streamlined. Being able to directly interact with the image is something you can only truly get on a touchscreen. And with the 120Hz display, along with the performance keeping up, this thing was a truly amazing experience for editing photos. I also do like to sketch concepts for thumbnails, or even just for fun. And again, using the knockoff Apple Pencil in Adobe Fresco, Illustrator, and ProCreate, I had an absolute blast using this thing as a drawing tablet. Also, just for fun, I had a go at making some music on this thing, and due to it being USB-C, I could use my proper audio interface. You can't see that. There. This one. In terms of gaming, I haven't really done that much gaming on this thing, to be honest. I did load up some games, and the experience was excellent, especially with the 120Hz screen in games that support it. If you do want a more dedicated breakdown of the gaming performance, I would probably recommend watching another video after this one, because yeah, I'm not exactly a big gamer. Overall performance on the iPad Pro 2018 has been pretty incredible throughout my usage, and using this thing as a creative tool throughout the latter half of this year has certainly been a great experience. Quickly, going back to the hardware, we have these speakers, which is a set of 4 in stereo, and honestly, these things sound pretty damn great. Significantly better than any phone I've tested. I constantly use this thing for listening to music while I'm just doing basic tasks, and while they're not going to be as bassy as dedicated speakers or headphones, for casual listening, they're plenty for me. Finally, we have the battery life. This iPad Pro features a battery size of 7,812 milliamp hours, and while on a phone this would be massive, remember, this thing has an 11-inch screen. So, does it eat up the battery life? Well, actually, I found it to be pretty decent. More intensive tasks like photo editing will, of course, drain the battery faster, but the standby preservation on this thing is very impressive. I think it's been like 3 or 4 days since I last charged this thing, and it's at 16%. There we go. See that? That said though, I've never tried to do anything like a load of video editing on the go away from a charger on this thing, and I do notice that on full brightness when doing these intensive tasks, the battery does drain noticeably faster, but for my usage, it's been great. Overall, if what I've talked about in this video sounds good to you, then yes, you should still seriously consider picking up an iPad Pro from 2018. It can now be got for some seriously great prices, so long as you don't mind missing out on the M1 processor or not being able to buy new, then this iPad is a great option. Even now. Alright guys, so that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Let me know, by the way, what do you think of the 2018 iPad Pro? What do you like? What do you not like? Are you planning to buy one? Do you already own one? Feel free to let me know in the comments. I always enjoy reading those. As for now though, as always, thank you for watching. Remember to like the video if you want to see more content like this, then smash that subscribe button. I'm done for now, and I will see you guys in the next one.